And welcome to Broken Entertainment. So I finally have gotten to a point with my story agent that I've been writing for a while now, where we're looking at publication. Should be this year, which is awesome. If you've been following this channel for any length of time, you know I've been working on this for a while. I started with a different project, which is still in the works, and then decided, hey, I'm gonna write a serialized story. That's something I can get out and have published and out there and readable in chunks while I'm finishing up this other project. I was originally going to put it on a service that Amazon had that first went from, hey, this is really good to put serials on, to, oh, this has been completely overrun by romance and erotica. And that's not where I want to put my story. So I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. I'm still working on editing it, so I'll put it on a different service. And then I looked at other services, and there weren't really any good options that in terms of professionalism and pay and all this stuff. And then I looked at the book. It's 70,000 words long. That's a novel. So what I've decided to do with Agent, and I'm going to manipulate that title a little bit, but Agent is going to be a part of it. But what I need to do is improve the title a little bit, make it a little more interesting, and make it a little bit more searchable. Because Agent alone is pretty common, which is not really what I'm looking for a title. Which most of my projects, I have at least a working title, and then that's always up for change before publication. Anyway, so I finally got to the point where I said, okay, I'm going to make this novel. It's going to be 70,000 words long, give or take. It is still the original intent of this story is it tells the story of one of the main villains from the novel series that I'm working on, and how they get to the point they are when they're in that novel series, when they're the villain. Then it will be followed by Director, which will also be a short novel. And then we'll lead right into Invasion, which is the book trilogy. That trilogy will have this character as a villain. Agent is entirely from this character's perspective. Character's name is Xai. As you can see on the picture, not human. Then in Director, we move to a little more of a distant perspective. So the story is still mostly from her perspective, but there's some other point of views brought in. And then by the time you get to Invasion and its sequel, you see her almost entirely from an outside point of view, from some other character's point of view. And the idea is that this character becomes more and more distant from the average person around her, right? She's an agent. She's part of an organization whose entire purpose is to see that her species survives well into the future. That is her single purpose in existing. All other concerns, all other objectives are either temporary or non-existent for them. They will do whatever it takes. They have no moral compunction about anything. As long as it sees the survival of their species, that's all that matters. This organization, Xai, is sent to Earth with the intent on, at least initially, to collect information, to study humans, understand them better. But there's some shadowy other purposes for why she's there and for what is being done. So that will be covered in the story, so I'm not going to go into depth on that. But she's a fun character. She's very competent. She has some stuff that she's running away from that she has kind of buried subconsciously. And she's very good at analyzing people. But she's not very good at analyzing herself. Takes place in 1939. She has been on Earth by this point for 600 years. Her species lives for a very long time. And they are shapeshifters, so she is able to take other forms. But that's limited to humanoid, and it's limited to forms that she has studied for a period of time. So she can take over a person's life and replace them, but it takes study and practice before she can. And that's how she's moved through human society over the last 600 years. And by the time the story starts, she's kind of like, why am I still here? This isn't serving our purpose. it's just gathering information on a species that can't even leave its own planet. 1939 rolls around. She replaces a woman who is an American, but who has married a SS officer in Germany. And the intent there is to gain access to German government and military, study them, study the Nazis, and kind of see where things go from there. While she's in Germany, she finds that there is a stash of weapons that have been brought over from her people, which are highly advanced. They're antimatter weapons. It's antimatter infantry weaponry that can absolutely devastate pretty much anything humans have. And she's immediately like, this is not this is not good. Not from any care of humanity. She doesn't care. But because it's a clear link to her own people, and now she's caught up in this. I've got to find out where these weapons are coming from. We got to find out who's providing them. I got to find out how this got started, and I've got to disable it and destroy everyone and everything related to it. Because if this information gets out, if these weapons are used by humans, the humans will destroy themselves, and we'll be blamed for it because our weapons are really obvious. And that spells complete disaster politically and diplomatically, and could lead to massive consequences for her people, so she cannot let this go on. And then eventually she connects with some humans that can help her along the way, but there's a lot more going on. She finds out under the surface, which I won't go into because it gives too much away. So it's a very fast-paced, very bit of a James Bond, Jason Bourne kind of setup, and she's really fun as a character. And I've been looking forward to this art for a while. So finally having it. This was done by John Dillard over at Dillard Draws, which I'll put all the links in the description. But this is what she looks like when she's in what we call her chosen form. And she's essentially wearing her uniform. By this point in the story, she has a Luger that she's kind of carrying around everywhere. Because she has, aside from the sword and the knife, she doesn't have her own weapons. She didn't bring any of that kind of weaponry because, well, again, it's really obvious, and she's really trying to blend in and take on these human forms and human roles, and carrying around an antimatter weapon isn't exactly stealthy, right? So she tends to adopt whatever weaponry is available at the time. In this case, the Luger. I just love this art. Really. She has eye implants. You can kind of see here that that's why they're all black with a reflective. So it's a artificial eye in both eyes that allows them to see all manner of different perspectives, and any kind of vision or sensory you could want, more or less she has, and that's covered in more detail in the book, but I'm going to leave that for the book. This is her uniform, and the sword is her badge of office, effectively. This is what she wears when she's not undercover, when she's very much like doing her thing openly. And when she's wearing this among her own people, it's a sign for everybody around her, like, oh, that's an agent. Don't interfere, don't get in the way. Leave them some space, right? And then this knife is actually something everybody in her species does as a rite of passage when they grow to maturity. So she's got two of them. You can't see the other one because it's on the other side. It was really, really cool to see the character drawn out. Because I have no art skills whatsoever, right? I am not an artist. I can paint models pretty well, I think, but that's not the same as drawing. And I've been wanting to see this species in particular, because there's a lot of different species in this setting, but the species in particular come to life and be depicted on the page, other than just words. So it's really cool to see for me. This character art is going to go into the book. It'll be, I don't know if it'll be one of the first pages or one of the last. I haven't figured that out yet. But I miss when books had art in them. You know, a lot of books anymore, science fiction and fantasy, a lot of them don't. And one of the book series that I really grew up with was Battletech. And back in the day, they had art of the different mechs. And it was kind of rudimentary, but they had art of the different mechs that were in the story in the back of the book. And that was so cool to me. And you go back farther and you get art more consistently in these books. I'm like, I would like to see that back. Now, I don't have other art pieces for Agent. This is going to be the one. But it's going to be in there. And it was really cool to work with an artist on this because I got to tell you, some of his interpretation was really neat. This knife in particular, a lot of this shape is kind of how he envisioned it from my description. And I'd never really... This was one of the cool things about being a writer, is you picture things a certain way and you describe them, and then other people read it and they have different interpretations, and I'd never really interpreted it to look this way. And the interesting thing is, this is actually a biological component. So this is a claw that is reforged to be a knife. It's coated in metal. It has a core that goes through the middle of it. And this claw falls off when they develop into adults, and they get a new one. But this one comes off, and they turn it into a knife that's kind of a reminder of their past and of growing up. And it also displays their status as adults. Not that people can't tell, but just one of those things. And it's really interesting is he did it this way, and I'm like, that's really, really interesting take on what I described. So, I was looking at some research material that I had. This is based off of something, okay? I don't want to get into that because that does actually matter for future writing. It actually works really well with what it should look like. And in my head, I'd always had it a little bit different than this. And just this interpretation in the sheath was really, really cool. And I love that about being a writer, where you can write something and someone else interprets it in a different way, and you're like, oh, that's really interesting. So I've kind of adopted this look for the knife because I think it's cooler than what I had in mind. I think you'll really enjoy reading Xai as a character. She is increasingly intricate as the stories go on. And you're very much not reading a protagonist that is a good guy, right? This is not a traditional hero who is going to save the day, and by golly gee willikers, they're not going to hurt anybody. And no, this is somebody who does everything and anything necessary to achieve their objective. In the book, she's surrounded by people that are pretty terrible because they're Nazis, right? Although there's some good people in it and they're not Nazis, but. And it's not an anti-Nazi story. It's not like punch a Nazi in the face. It's a time period thing. They're there because of the time period that takes place in, and it's the time period it takes place in because of what happens later on in other books. But it's somebody you, I think, will want to follow. It's somebody that people who have read it have really enjoyed following. She's just really tough, really determined, strong-willed person. When she's in major fights, she's not telling jokes, she's not quipping with people, she's very focused, very serious in what she's doing. Yeah, very excited. I love this art, I love this interpretation of the character. I really think you're going to enjoy Agent. I will release some previews of Agent once the editing is done, and we're going to get on to the book cover and all this fun stuff. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming, a lot of neat updates that I think you'll enjoy. And I can finally start talking to you in more concrete terms about this stuff. Because I've just kind of talked about it a little bit offhand. So we're gonna really get into some fun stuff coming up pretty soon. Because as I've said before, it's not just about criticizing the way media is now. Plenty of people can do that. It's about creating alternatives. And I'm not talking about anything like a parallel economy or any of that nonsense. We need stories, and rather than go, oh, there's only stories I don't really like right now, or there's a lot of stories I don't really like right now, and there's certain trends that a lot of people aren't enjoying. I'm just gonna make some stuff that people can enjoy, and it's an option for people. You can read this when it comes out, or you cannot. It's something that's out there, and it's something that I think is very interesting. I'm going to make it as professional as possible because this is, it's going to be self-published, but I'm going to put a lot of work into that. I'm not using AI covers. I'm not using any of this stuff like that. Editing is involved, right? Not just putting it out there. It's always been about, for me, next steps, creating stories. And I have been writing stories forever. I'm not one of those guys that just suddenly, I might make a few bucks by making a story. This is not something I'm just jumping into. This is something I want you to know is coming from somebody who's been writing for a long time, who has a great deal of respect for writing, for art, for creativity. This to me is not just a cash grab. It's not, we're going to try to make money off. Obviously I want to make some money off of it, but that's not the main goal. The main goal is to tell a fun story, write some interesting characters, do some things that maybe other people haven't done before. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you liked the video, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing, and I will see you next time.